Leap 360 provides several multi-level reports for teachers that can be very important for planning purposes. The first one is the test session response map. The second report is the test session summary report. And the third one is the test session roster report. Before we begin looking at each of those reports, there are several things that teachers need to keep in mind. The first one is that each multi-level report is updated 24 hours after the teacher scores the written responses and educator scoring. Second is that the students must complete all sessions of the test. Teacher must score the written responses. And finally, only those students who have completed all sessions and whose written responses have been scored will appear in the multi-level reports. So if there are 10 students in your session, not all 10 will show up if this is not met. So only those students who have completed all sessions and whose written responses have been scored will appear in the multi-level reports. So let's go ahead and take a look at each of these reports. So the first one is the test session response map. So let's look at a report that covers this. So I'm going to go ahead and expand this. And I want you to notice that in the top portion here, the test sessions is going to be listed, the test grade. So this is going to be a grade 7 here. And so notice right here it's called the test session report. So basically what's going to happen is very similar to the student um, response map. So notice that for each student, student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4, the list is listed and then the percentage is there. So if you remember, if you go back to the student report, the response map, the percentage is not listed, but here the percentage is. And so student 1 received 44% of the items correct. Student 2, 64%, and so on. The rest of this is very similar to the student response map, the individual reports. So the student response map, very similar. Remember green, remember the colors. Green meant that the student got all the items correct. White implied that the student did not get the item correct, so they got 0 points. And then yellow, remember, means partial credit. So the student got, if it was 2 points, the student may have gotten 1 point instead of 2 points. All right, so notice that in this first page it goes from item 1, item 2, item 3, and so on for each of these students listed. So notice that on this first page you have student 1, student 2, student 3, student 4, and so on. If you go to the next page, I just want you to be aware of this. If you go to the next page, it goes from items 10 through 18. Those same students are listed. So student 1, remember the 44%, student 2, the 64%, and so on. So this second page goes from items 10 through 18. The third page goes from items 19 through 27. The same students. Student 1 all the way to that last student that's listed here. The fourth page goes from 28 to 36. And then the next page here goes from 37 to 41, and on this particular test there were 41 items. Now I want to keep in mind that I want you to notice that I am using last year's diagnostic assessments because this year most teachers have not gone to educator scoring yet, so there won't be any of these reports. I am using last year's. The report's going to be the same this year. What I want to make you note though is that the You see how it ended at 41 for these? And there were one, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. There were 7 students. The next page, you're going to start over with the other 7 students. So this could end up being like 15 pages, uh, 17 pages, depending on how many students are in your session. All right, so all I did at this point was just show you that for this particular um, test, which was English Language Arts Form 1B for grade 7, this teacher for the first 7 students would have to go through each of those pages to see their response. Then the next page, you're going to go through the other 7 students, and then the other 7 students, and so on. So this report can be pretty lengthy. Okay, so that is what the test session response maps look like. Now, before I go on, let me just mention this. You see, it says C test. Now, it says C test because remember the student had to write something. So keep in mind that if the student in the written response, before you submit the score, you will need to print out the response if you want a copy of it. So if you want a copy of their uh, written response, then at that point you would need to print it. But C-test just means that the response would be on the item itself. So you would have to go back and hopefully you printed it. Um, so if you didn't print and you submit it, you cannot go back and see it. I also want to mention that you remember the individual report for the student response map where you had all these items here, the item number, subcategory, item type, text complexity, and so on. So all this is very similar to the individual student response map, except for the test session response map, it lists all of the students. So all of the students is listed. So that is very useful for a teacher to use in planning instruction. So they can see all the students in just one report. Okay, so don't forget about the keys down here, what each item represents. It's very similar again to the individual student report called the response map. So that is the um, the test session response map report. So I'm going to go ahead and move this over. And then the next thing I want to do is look at the test session summary report. Test session summary report. So let me pull this over and let's expand it. And so it's very similar again to the individual student report. Remember the student summary report? Except this time, I want you to notice something. So this time we're looking at a math one. So this is grade 8 math. And I want to mention several things here. Um, and let me go ahead and say it now. So you see where it says the number of test sessions reported, so 21 over 21. So what that means is that there were 21 students in this test session, and all 21 completed all sessions, and teacher scored the the written response and educator scoring. That's what that means. Now, if you look at the next and see where it says number of school tests reported, so for this particular school, there were 211 students in the test sessions. As of this report, only 199 completed all sessions, and the teacher scored the responses, the written response. And then you have information about the school system. So for this particular school system, EBR, 2,027 students were in test sessions, and 1,434 completed all test sessions, and the teacher scored the written responses. So notice there are quite a few students in the district that did not complete the test, not complete all test sessions, or it could also mean that they did complete it, but the teacher did not go in and score the written responses. Okay, so just want to make a note of that, what all this part right here means. Now, notice that this is a math one, so you have your reporting category for, and this is grade 8, so for grade 8 you have all these reporting categories for math. And then notice that for this particular test session, 28, the average correct was 28% for expressions and equations. For the school though, it was 33%. So the school did as a whole did better than this particular test session. The school system as a whole did better than the school and did better than the test session. So 43, the average score was 43% on expressions and equations. Then if you look at geometry, for this test session, this particular test session, the students did better than the school as a whole, but the district still did better than the school or the individual test session we are looking at. Then the same thing for functions. And then this mathematical practices. Now, mathematical practices is always the harder one to get. So notice how low these percentages are. Um, so in this particular test session, students did better on functions, and for this test session, students did better on functions than they did on the other two. So the other two, expressions and equations and geometry, are about the same for those test sessions, for that test session. All right, so just make sure you understand how to read this. So this could be very useful for planning purposes as a whole. Um, okay, so again, notice that the test sessions listed for this particular test session, and then you have the school as a whole, and then you have the school system for this particular test. So this is grade 8 math. Then if we scroll down, let's take a look at and this is the other part, I'm sorry. So remember you have the bar graphs here, and then here you have the table form. So as a whole, for this particular test session, um, the students scored 7.7 out of 28, 4.7 out of 16 for geometry, 2.6 out of 6 for functions, and then zero point 0.2 out of 6 for mathematical practices. And then those are percentages. See this 28%? That corresponds to this 28%. All right, so the bar graphs include information about the test session, it includes information about the school, and it includes information about the school system for this test. So remember, we're looking at grade 8 math. The um, the table here is just for that particular test session. Now, if we scroll down, let's take a look at an English one. So this is grade 8 English, and remember that was Form 1B. And so I want you to notice something here. See right here where it says number of test sessions reported 10 of 11. So that means that there were 11 students in that test session, and one of them either did not complete all sessions of the test, or if they did, the teacher did not score the written response. That's what that means. And so again, here's information about the school and then information about the district. So there's quite a few students in the district where uh, the test sessions were either not completed or the teacher did not go in and score the written response. So again, just like with the math, you have your subcategories, and then you have information about the test session for each of those categories, and you have information about the school and the school system. So the teacher can compare themselves with the school as a whole, and then the school system also. And then again, here's the table form. So you have reading and writing. So you have information about the reading categories, and you have information about the writing categories. So this could be important for teachers for planning purposes. So that's going to take care of this report. So this report, the test session summary report. Okay, so let's look at the other one. Okay, so the next one I want to look at is called the test session roster report. So let's take a look at what this looks like. So basically, I'm going to expand this. So basically, again, notice you have information up here. So this is going to be a grade 4 and grade 4 ELA. So this is a grade 4 ELA. So again, notice the number of test sessions reported, 14 of 20. So there were 20 students. There were 20 students in the test session. 14 of those completed the tests, all sessions, and the teacher scored the written response in educator scoring. And then notice for the school, there were 63 students in all the test sessions for grade 4 ELA, and 49 of them completed the sessions, and the teacher scored the written responses. And then again, you have information about the district. But I want you to notice this. So each student is listed. So each of those 14 students, remember there are 14 students, so you're going to have 14 students here. That could be more than one page. And then the lists. And then for each of those subcategories, you're told out of 26 points for reading literary text, how many points did each of those students get? For reading informational text, out of 26 points, how many did each of those students get? And then the same thing for reading vocabulary, same thing for writing, written content, written presentation, and writing conventions. Now, I want to mention this. See the writing part, this part here, that's the one that the teacher scored. That's the one that the teacher scored. Oops. Let me say something again. So you see where there's a 0 here, 0 to 10, 0 to 4, 0 to 4, 0 to 2. Now let me say this. If the student leaves it blank, remember there's nothing for the teacher to score. So it automatically gives them a 0. So when I say that this is the part that the teacher scores in educator scoring, that's if the student doesn't leave it blank. If the student writes something, then there's something for the teacher to score. If the student leaves it blank, it will automatically become 0. So either the student left these blank or the teacher gave them zeros on all parts. So just keep in mind that this is the part that the teacher scores in educator scoring, and this is the part that the computer, the DRC, grades automatically, this part here. So the reading literary text, the reading informational text, reading vocabulary. Okay? Now the only bad thing that some teachers don't like about this is that it doesn't list the percentages for on this particular report. So this is the test session roster report. Now let's go ahead and look at this one. So let's look at a math one. So this is Algebra 1, and then for this test session, there were 13 students. 12 have been or on this report. So 12 on this report. So there's one student who either did not complete all sessions, or if they did, the teacher did not score the response. And so again, you have information about the school and you have information about the school system. So you have the student's name, the LACID, and then here are the reporting categories for Algebra 1. So you have C in algebra, structure and expressions. There were 5 points, and it indicates how many of those points the student received. The same thing for algebra, arithmetic with polynomial and rational expressions. Then the next one, creating equations, and so on. Okay, now if there's more than one student, they would appear on the next page. Now, let me just say something about the math one. So the constructed response will be listed here for the diagnostic and the interims. It will be part of the mathematical practices. So there was apparently just probably one constructed response for Algebra 1, and it was worth 6 points. And it looks like either there was something there the student put, and the teacher gave them 0 or 1, it looks like, or If it's zero, it could be that the student left it blank. Now remember, the student leaves it blank, it automatically gives them a score of zero. So this part here was the writing response. That's the mathematical practices part. Okay? All right. So that is called the test session roster report. So you have your list of all your students, and for each of those reporting categories, you're told how many points they got out of each of those categories. All right, so um, that was the test session roster report. So let's go ahead now and kind of end this. So again, there were three multi-level reports that teachers could or are important for teachers: the test session response map, the test session summary report, and the test session roster report. And that will conclude the Leap 360 multi-level reports for teachers.